Welcome back everybody to another one in my aviation history videos, and today's video is going to be just a little bit different. This is kind of more of a sort of a personal passion project. Kind of went down the rabbit hole of internet research and realized that what I was looking for probably would be of interest to other people and would most likely make a good video. So here we are. So if you've read the title, you would have known why you're here. Today we're going to be looking at the history on the background and some history on the aircraft used in the filming of the Memphis Belle. Like I said, bit of a rabbit hole research dive I did, and we'll get into some details here in a second of how I ended up at this point. But before we go any farther, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. So as I mentioned, this is a bit of like a personal passion project video. It all started a couple of weeks back. Apple TV officially dropped the trailer for Masters of the Air, and this is something I have been waiting for a while. If you haven't heard or seen it yet, they did release the trailer. Masters of the Air is the same people who did Band of Brothers, the Pacific. It's Spielberg, it's Tom Hanks, it's the same showrunners. It was initially an HBO show. HBO, it was announced, kind of went quiet, and then it was announced that it went to Apple TV, and then it kind of went quiet. And then not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago, we started seeing some pictures and some behind the scenes stuff from the filming that took place in the UK, some full-size replicas. I'll put a picture here of one of these full-size replicas they made. It looks unbelievable. So we started to see these pictures, excitement built up again, and then everything kind of went quiet again. And as I said, Apple TV Apple TV announced that it's going to be a January release. And they dropped the trailer, and the trailer will be down below in the description. I'm not going to do a reaction. That's not what I do. I'm not going to put it here. But if you want to see the trailer, down below in the description, I'll have a link to it. So this got me very, very excited. And of course, I showed the trailer to a bunch of friends, and I showed my wife, and I basically explained, like, hey, this is going to be 10 hours of Memphis Belle. And that explains a lot of who I am and why I am the way I am. So growing up, I watched many movies, airplane movies. My dad had Battle of Britain on video. We rented 633 Squadron, Top Gun, Blue Max, all of those other movies, Iron Eagle, all of the aviation museums, all of the aviation movies that was released. I had basically seen at least once, if not multiple times. Battle of Britain, I would watch all the time. And then Memphis Belle released in 91, 92. And I was a mid-80s baby. So by the time it came out on VHS, I was in that, 8 to 10 year old range, and my dad had a copy of it, and I watched it all the time. I probably watched that movie 2, 3, 4 times a month. I knew it scene by scene, line by line. I still do. I can put it on and I know it word for word. I could probably reenact that movie 100 times. It's a great movie. I loved it. I still do. I think it's one of the, it's got its inaccuracies, but I think it's one of the best, well done aviation movies there are. There's not a lot of side story. It's just a straight down the middle story about a bomber crew, and I'm kind of excited to see where Masters of the Air goes, because I feel like it's going to be, as I said, 10 hours of Memphis Belle. So I got very excited about that. And then I realized as I got, I kind of started rewatching some of the scenes of Memphis Belle again and whatever, and the moments I like and all that other stuff. And it was while I was doing that I realized, hey, like there's a lot of practical flying in Memphis Belle. There's no CG. It was models and practical flying. And I realized, I've seen a large number of B-17s, not just airworthy, but in museums. I've seen I've seen a bunch of B-17s. I have seen a ton of P-51s, and I've seen my fair share of Buchons. What are the chances that I've seen the aircraft that were used in the filming? I know I've seen one. One of them was the very first B-17 I'd ever seen in person, which was the main aircraft used, which we'll go into detail here in a second. And I'm rambling in the intro, I understand that. So again, go down to chapters if you want to jump ahead and see specific stuff and skip me rambling here. But I knew I had seen at least one of them, but what else had I seen? How many aircraft were actually used in the filming, and where are they now? And I started doing this research, and I realized there isn't really one source for all of this information. You can go to the Internet Airplane Movie Database, which I'll put a link to. It's really great, actually, if you see anything in a movie or a TV show or a commercial, and you're like, what plane was that? Or what movie had that plane in it? Well, you can go to that website and you can look it up. And it's an amazing resource, and I give everyone who contributes to that website props. It's no pun intended. It's an amazing website. So I went to there. It had a list of all the planes used, but it just had a list at the time. Where are they today? Well, that doesn't exist. And so you're jumping around between Warbird Registry and Mustangs and forum posts, and you're back and forth and news articles and all that other stuff to kind of figure out, what's the history on the airframes that were used and where are they today? And that's where the light bulb went off, and I thought, hey, I could make a movie of this, a video. I'm sure there's people out there who have the same questions as I do and the same interests, and now you have one-stop shopping to figure all that details out. So that's where this whole thing came from. So we'll jump in. As I said, I'm going to have chapters below. I'm going to break them down by aircraft type, B-17s, then P-51s, then Buchons, and then the filming aircraft. So you can jump down and take a look all you want. Now, I will caveat all of this with preface that some of the information is hard to find. Some of it's really easy to find. Others are a little sketchy. So there might be some inaccuracies in what I'm going to say. I don't espouse to be an expert on this stuff. I'm doing the same research that everyone else is doing online. I don't have any inside knowledge. So my knowledge that's in the video, the content of this video, is as good as the information I could find online. And by all means, if anybody out there sees any inaccuracies or mistakes, please comment down below and we can pin the topic and make sure everyone's aware that, yes, I made a mistake and here's where and here's why. I'm not going to re-edit and re-upload the video. So that's that. Let it jump on into this video and we can take a look at where all of those aircraft are and where they came from that filmed the Memphis Belle. So the most recognizable aircraft used in the filming was B-17G November 3703 Golf. It was built by Douglas in Long Beach, California, and was taken on strength by the USAAF as 4483546 and was immediately put into storage in Texas. In 1946, it was converted into a CB-17, used for troop transport and could carry up to 46 troops. Used by a number of units in the continental US, it was then assigned to units based in Germany in 1948, but was only there for about 9 months, as it was back in the US by October of 48. On its return to the US, it was converted into a VB-17, used as a VIP transport. Used by the base unit at Offutt Air Force Base upon conversion, it was transferred to the 5th Air Force Fighter Command in Japan and served there from 1951 to 1954. In 1954, the USAF put it into storage at the Boneyard in Tucson, and it was there until 1959. So in July of 1959, this aircraft was sold into the private market and was first owned by the National Metals Company based in Tucson and was assigned the civil registration November 3703 Golf. In September, it was sold to Fastway Air Service in California and was converted into a tanker and operated as Tanker E-75. It was then sold to the Columbia Fire Service operating as Tanker E-78, and finally to TBM Inc. in 1967, still operating as Tanker E-78. In 1982, it was sold to David Talichet and the Military Aircraft Restoration Company, and the aircraft was ferried to Chino. At this point, the nose perspex had been replaced by a sheet metal one, but it is unknown when this mod was completed. At this point, the aircraft was restored into a wartime F model with the older Stinger tailgun and an earlier style upper turret. It was loaned to the March Air Force Base Museum and was on loan off and on until 1989. At this point, it was restored back to flying condition and was painted up as Memphis Belle to be the main aircraft in the filming. It was ferried to Duxford and used in the filming. Now, it was also used to represent Mama's Boys during the takeoff sequence and can also be seen as Mary Lou, Sweet Marine, and Sweet Dreams. After filming, it was returned to the U.S. and continued to be flown. While it was still owned by the Military Aircraft Restoration Company, it was operated by a number of different organizations, namely the American Air Power Museum in Farmingdale, New York, and most famously the 1941 Historical Aircraft Group, also known as the National Warplane Museum in Geneseo, New York. It carried a stylized nose art for the movie, and then in the early 2000s was painted in a more historically accurate scheme, but they had to revert back to the stylized version due to copyright issues with the United States Air Force and the original Memphis Belle, now on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton. Today, as it is flown, it still has the stylized nose art and actually has the name The Movie Memphis Belle, not just Memphis Belle. Now, it was a fixture at many East Coast air shows and was actually the first B-17 that I had ever seen when it attended the Ottawa Air Show back in 2003. Now, recently, in a drive to keep the aircraft airworthy for a longer time, it was relocated to the California desert and is now operated by the Palm Springs Air Museum. Their plan is a deep cleaning as well as light restoration, and then operating the aircraft at local air shows and fly-ins, as the drier California air will ensure the aircraft can stay flying longer, a lot more than living in the Northeast with the winter and everything else. Now, the other aircraft that is most closely associated with the movie is B-17G Golf Bravo Echo Delta Foxtrot, known today as Sally B. Built by Lockheed Vega in Burbank, it was accepted by the USAF as 4485784 in July of 1945. It was immediately converted into a TB-17 trainer and was based at Dayton starting in November of 45. In 1949, it was designated as an EB-17 and used for testing and research purposes, still based out of Dayton. Famously, it was used in the flight tests for the wingtip pod flight control setup, where the pilot was based in a pod mounted on the wingtip. In 1954, the aircraft was converted back to the standard layout and moved to Hill Air Force Base in Utah for storage. At this point, it was sold to the National Geographic Institute in France and was flown over to Europe. It was assigned the registration FBGSR, Foxtrot Bravo Golf Sierra Romeo, and was modified to be used for aerial survey and mapping uses. They operated in this role until the early 1970s, when it was deemed too expensive to keep flying. In March of 1975, the aircraft was purchased by Ted White and was relocated to Great Britain as November 17 Tango Echo. It was named Sally B in memory of Ted's longtime partner, and it was first flown publicly at Duxford in 1975. Now, in 1982, Ted was tragically killed in a T-6 crash in Malta, and in his memory, the right inner cowling was painted in the yellow and black checker as carried by that T-6. The ownership of Sally B had been moved to a foundation, and they continued to fly the aircraft throughout England and Europe in memory of Ted, as well as all the American airmen killed during World War II. In 1989, when filming for Memphis Belle started, Sally B was asked to participate, and it was a natural fit as it was already in England and was fitted with a smoke system. It also had a tail turret and ball turret set up to fire blanks and was used with a lot of pyro work during filming. It was also used as Windy City during the takeoff sequence and can also be seen as Lady Jane, My Zeta, and Hot Lips. And it was also used to film the final sequence when the Memphis Belle returns to land. The money from the movie role, as well as the larger public interest, ensured Sally B could continue to raise enough funds to stay flying. Unfortunately, in 1998, the aircraft suffered an engine failure in Guernsey, and after almost a year of hard work and fundraising, the aircraft was repaired and returned to Duxford, but there was no money left. After being grounded for about a year due to lack of funds, the ownership was turned into a charitable trust, and the aircraft was able to get back into the air. Today, the aircraft continues to fly, with Sally B on the left nose and Memphis Belle on the right side, and the yellow-black checker on the right inboard cowling. She still graces the skies of England and is a huge hit whenever she takes to the skies. The next B-17 we will look at is November 17 Whiskey, and this is the second of the two U.S. registered aircraft that participated in the filming. Now, it was built as B-17F in 1943 by Boeing in Seattle and accepted by the USAAF as 4229782. It was delivered to Wright Field, then to Wyoming for modification, then on to California to be used as a training airframe. It ended up in Washington State before finally ending the war in Florida, designated as a TB-17F. In November of 1945, it was put into storage pending disposal, and in 1946, it was sent to Stuttgart, Arkansas, to be used as a war memorial, stripped of all of its turrets and other wartime fixtures. In 1953, having sat derelict for a number of years, the aircraft was sold to the Bygart brothers in Nebraska, and they restored the aircraft to airworthy status, equipped it with tanks to be used as a water bomber, as well as an aerial sprayer, with the registration November 17 Whiskey. It was leased to the Central Aircraft out of Washington, and then in 1961 sold to Globe Air, who used it as a tanker. Now, in 1968, the aircraft was used in the filming of the 1,000 plane raid, and then right after in the filming of Tora Tora Tora, which actually involved it being flown all the way out to Hawaii. It then went back to its life as a tanker until 1985, when it was purchased by Robert Richardson, who was then a trustee at the Seattle Museum of Flight. The aircraft was relocated to Seattle, and over the next few years, top and bottom turrets were located and installed. When Memphis Belle filming began, November 17 Whiskey was one of the aircraft selected to be part of the filming. While it was an original F model and would seem to have been the better option for the primary role, the interior was still that of a tanker and very utilitarian, while November 3703 Golf had an interior more accurate to the war, and so November 17 Whiskey was relegated to a support role. It was known to carry two sets of markings, one on each side, in order to make it seem to have more aircraft than there were. It carried nose arts of C Cup, DFX, as well as DPX. During the takeoff scenes, it also carried the nose art of Clooney Baby, Black Eyed Peas, and Buckaroo. After filming, the aircraft returned to the US and went through a deep restoration, bringing it up to an extremely high standard of accuracy and is considered one of the most accurate B-17 restorations around. Marked as Boeing B, it was flown to the Museum of Flight in Seattle in 1998 and has been on permanent static display since. Now this brings us to the final two B-17s, and these are the French registered, which were both owned by the National Geographic Institute. First, we'll talk about Foxtrot Alpha Zulu Delta X-Ray. This aircraft was built as a B-17G by Lockheed in Burbank in December of 1944 and accepted by the US AAF as 448846. Now, it had a radar fitted in place of the ball turret and was flown to England and assigned to the 511th Bomb Squadron and is known to have flown 6 missions over Germany during the war. Once the war was over, the aircraft was assigned to the 45th Reconnaissance Squadron based in Germany. Now, it remained with this unit throughout many organizational changes until 1949 when it was moved to the 7499 Air Force Composite Squadron and the aircraft was redesignated as an RB-17. In 1953, the aircraft was retired from frontline service and returned to the U.S. and located at Hill Air Force Base and put into storage. This is also one of the final B-17s used in active service by the United States Air Force. In 1954, it was purchased by the National Geographic Institute and flown to France. It was modified to allow it to be used for aerial mapping and survey work and registered as Foxtrot Bravo Golf Sierra Papa. In 1965, it was used in a survey mission in South Africa, and the registration Zulu Sierra Delta X-Ray Mike was reserved, but not used. It was one of the last B-17s flown by the IGN and was used to track the spread of oil from a spill in 1978, as well as mapping Greenland in 1979, and it was then placed into storage. In 1985, a consortium was formed to keep this aircraft flying, and it was re-registered as Foxtrot Alpha Zulu Delta X-Ray, and it was painted in pseudo 8th Air Force markings with the name Lucky Lady. When the time came for the filming of Memphis Belle, the aircraft was chosen as one of those to be used, and it was outfitted with proper armament as well as having an earlier Stinger-style tail turret installed. As usual with these aircraft, it carried two different sets of marking, DFS on the left and DFO on the right. Now, importantly, this aircraft carried the name Mother and Country on the left side, and this aircraft played a prominent supporting role in the film. I'm also pretty sure it was used as the facilitating virgin during the takeoff sequence due to the window arrangement. After filming wrapped up, the aircraft returned to France, kept the olive drab paint, but was christened Pink Lady. She carries this on the left side with a smaller name on the right, along with a small Mother and Country marking in honor of her time as the film star. In 2011, with the cost of flying the aircraft always rising, it was parked and has been static since. There are still plans to eventually get her airworthy once again, so time will tell. Now, the final B-17 we'll talk about is the final French one, Foxtrot Bravo Echo Echo Alpha. This aircraft was built in 1945 and accepted by the US AAF as 4485643. It was immediately put into storage and was subsequently sold to the National Geographic Institute in France, the first one they acquired. It was modified for aerial survey and mapping missions and was used across Europe and Africa and as far afield as Papua New Guinea. As the other B-17s were retired, this one was kept flying and was the final aircraft operated by the IGN when it was used in the filming of Memphis Belle in 1989. It was painted as both DFU and DFE, but importantly it carried the nose art of Baby Ruth during the filming. It is not seen as often as the others, as it has a heavily framed nose perspex and was normally only used in background aircraft. Tragically, it suffered engine trouble during a takeoff run and swerved off the side of the runway, hitting a tree and a gravel pile, which resulted in a fire. All the crew got out safely, but the aircraft was a complete write-off. Now this brings us to the other aircraft types that were used in the filming, and I won't be going into too much detailed history, but I will go through the details of where the aircraft are located now. So first, we'll take a look at the P-51s. So first is November 5-1 Juliet Juliet, serial number 4473149. It has marked up as AJS for filming, with Moose on the left side of the nose and Candyman on the right side. Now, it was used in the U.S. for stateside training, and then served with the RCAF in the 1950s before being sold into the warbird market in 1957. It was based at Duxford during the filming. Now, this aircraft is still airworthy today and is based in Turkey as Tango Charlie Sierra Mike Oscar, marked up as Fearless Frankie. Next is the P-51 Golf Bravo India X-Ray Lima, serial number 4472216, and this was marked up as AJL Miss L during the filming. Now, it served with the 487th Fighter Squadron in January of 1945, and then went to the Swedish Air Force post-war. In 1953, it was sold to the Israeli Air Force, and it was recovered in 1976, and it entered the civilian market in 1981. Now, this aircraft was based at Duxford during the filming, and the aircraft is still based in England today and is flown by the Aircraft Restoration Company. Next is P-51 Golf Sierra Uniform Sierra Yankee, serial number 4472773, and was marked up as AJC during filming. This aircraft was delivered to the USAAF in 1945 and was ferried to Italy, but never saw combat, and returned to the US and was used by the post-war Air National Guard. Sold off to Nicaragua in 1958, then into the civilian market in 1963. Now, it was based in Hampshire during the filming of the movie, and this aircraft is still airworthy today, based in Germany and registered as Delta Foxtrot Papa Sierra India. Next is P-51 November 167 Foxtrot, serial number 4473877, and was painted up as AJN Cisco Wing. So this aircraft was put into storage immediately upon construction, and it was used by the RCAF until 1957, when it was sold into the civilian market. It went through a full restoration in 1986, and it seems to have been based at Duxford during the filming. Now, it's currently flying in Norway and is still registered as November 167 Foxtrot. Next up, we have November 314 Bravo Golf, serial number 4473140, and was marked up as HOPD II. Now, I can't find any actual reference as to how this aircraft was marked during filming, but it was used in filming. So, put into storage immediately after construction, it was then used by the RCAF until 1957, when it was sold into the civilian market. During filming, it was based at Biggin Hill and is currently flown out of the Lone Star Flight Museum in Texas, registered as November 51 Golf Echo, and is painted up with the nose art of Bucket List. Next is November 1051 Sierra, serial number 4511371. During filming, I shouldn't say during filming. The note I had, it was painted up as VFS Sunny 8, but I don't have exact details of what it was marked up as during filming. So it was used by the U.S. Air National Guard in the post-war years, and then it was sold off to Nicaragua in 1958. By 1963, it was in the civilian world, and it was based at Southend in the UK during filming. It was returned to the US in 1992, but was sadly destroyed in a fatal accident in 1995. Finally, we have Golf Hotel Alpha Echo Charlie, and this aircraft is actually a Australian-built CAC CA-18 Mark 22 with the registration serial number A68192. During filming, it was painted up as 4472917, AJA as Ding Hao. So built in 1951 in Australia, it was used by the RAAF for a number of years, and then it was sold into the civilian market in 1958. It was based in Duxford during the filming, and it later went to Germany as Delta Foxtrot Bravo Bravo Delta, and was destroyed during a mid-air collision at Duxford in 2011. So that takes us to the end of all of the P-51s, and notably, if you didn't catch on as we were talking there, all of these aircraft were based in England during the filming. So no aircraft were brought in from other countries or from the US. These were all UK-based aircraft during the filming of the movie. Now, there was also a number of CASA Buchons that were used during filming, 3 to be exact. Golf Bravo Oscar Mike Lima, was based in the UK at the time, and it was used as a taxiing airframe during the Battle of Britain filming. So it was based in Duxford at the time of filming of Memphis Belle, but it was crashed in 1999, killing its owner, Mark Hanna, who was a well-known warbird owner and pilot in the UK. Next is Golf Hotel Uniform November, also used during the filming of Battle of Britain. During the time of the filming of Memphis Belle, it was based at Duxford and is now located in the Kavanaugh Flight Museum in Texas and registered as November 109 Golf Uniform, and was also used in the filming of... I lost track of the name. Anyways, it was used in the filming of another movie. I'll put it on the screen here when it comes up because I never put it in my notes. The last Buchon that was used was Delta Foxtrot Echo Hotel Delta, and it was based in Germany at the time and was brought over to England to film the Memphis Belle. After that, it went through a bit of a restoration and was fitted with a DB601 engine and a later style ME109 canopy, and it still flies today, owned by the Messerschmitt Foundation in Germany, and obviously looks a lot more original to an ME109 versus a CASA Buchon. The last two of the aircraft we're going to talk about are actually, for the most part, not seen in the filming. One of them is not. The first, the B-25, November 1042 Bravo. Never seen in the movie itself, and it was used for filming. And it had a modified nose used for filming and was based in North Weld during the time of filming. So it had the name Dolly applied and was used in many air-to-air shots for movies and TV. It currently flies in the US and is painted up as the Pacific Prowler with a standard B-25 nose fitted. Now the last and the harder to find any info on is Avenger November 6827 Charlie. At the time of filming, it was owned by the old Flying Machine Company, who also owned one of the P-51s and the Buchons that was used for filming. Now, this was used for some of the backward shots seen in the movie, and it was only used a handful of times. But when you know what you look for, you can see it. The tail was painted up olive drab, and so there's some backward shots out of like the rear turret looking back at the formation of aircraft, and you can see the Avenger tail in front of the shot. The aircraft is still currently flying and is based in New Zealand as Zulu Kilo Tango Bravo Echo.
So this brings us to the end of this video. And as you can see, there was quite a bit of detail and history on some of these aircraft. And again, really hard to find all these in one place. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this and is a little bit of use to all of you out there. And on that note, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. And we will see you all next time.